And now it's my pleasure to introduce Harry Burgess. To give you a little background, Harry was hired as the county manager in 2011. Prior to coming to Los Alamos County, he worked in the governmental sector in New Mexico for over 17 years, including positions as city administrator in Carlsbad, county manager for Grants County, and administrative services director for Eddy County. He holds a bachelor's degree in industrial relations, a master's degree in fire and emergency management administration, a master business administration degree, and a doctoral degree in economic development. So I guess that would be, please join me in welcoming Dr. Harry Burgess.
Well, thank you for being here this morning. I'm glad we've got fleur-de-lis and some food. Otherwise, probably have half the people here this morning, I imagine, right? I like the opportunity to come before the community every year and talk about our last year's efforts. Done this several times now, and my goal today is just to talk about what we've accomplished in the last year from the county's perspective and some projects we've got going forward. So every year we put together an annual report, and that's really the focus of my discussion today. Y'all each should have, I believe, a copy in front of you. Obviously, I'm starting out similar to what the annual report shows. I just couldn't get the colors quite right, but I like the picture, so good way to start. And another picture I like too here is a good reminder to me. If you look online for this annual report, if you'll go to the county's website, go to the webpage for the county manager's office, and right at the top there's a link to our annual report. On the online version, it's a web-based version. It presents really well. I encourage you to go look at it. It's a lot more dynamic than this paper version. And there's some additional information, pictures, and other things that pop up as you scroll through it. So please take a chance to look at it. I think Leslie Buckland really took a lot of time. Our staff, I have to thank a lot of different people for putting together this annual report. It's certainly not all mine, but Leslie took some special time to put it in that web form, and please check that out because it's kind of neat as well. This picture is just a good reminder of what we're dealing with these days. Last year, this time, if we'd looked outside, anybody remember, it was dry as could be. But obviously, with all the weather we've had lately, it's had an impact on our community. Philo in the back is, certainly nod when we talk about the effect it's had on our personnel. We've spent a lot of time moving snow lately, and it's a great thing to have. It's kind of, Philo and I talk about it because we both like to ski. At the same time, every time it snows, it's got that obligation of getting out there and getting things done too, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. But it's really neat opportunity that we have to kind of eliminate some of these negative drought conditions, and certainly has gotten a lot of input from our community. It's funny, every time we have an event, we have a lot of different opinions, as we do in this community all the time. And I hear, you're doing too much, you're doing too little. So we try to find that fine balance in our provision of services in between the desires of the community and the budget that we have available to provide those services. And that dictates a lot of what we're able to do. To start with this year, and we talked about this last year, but it's an ongoing issue in our community, and the county has had some action in that too, and that's housing. I think anybody in this room who might have tried to move here in the last couple of years saw that. Fraser, okay. Finding just an available property in the community is very hard these days. I was talking to a real estate broker at one of our meetings the other day, and the comment was we have 17 houses on the market, total, any price range. And further, absorption was in the range of about 2 weeks. It's not a bad deal if you're trying to sell your house, but it's been a big issue that we've heard a lot about as the lab's been hiring, both from the environmental management and the operations side of things. There's a lot of interest in getting new people here. Unfortunately, we don't have the housing stock to accommodate everyone. And so people, as they have for years, are finding different locations to find a house. I think the interesting thing is this pressure has put on the county additional pressure to open up lands where we were trying to get development going in years past and getting no bidders. Now we have multiple ones interested in coming up here and doing work, whether it's for housing or for some retail projects we've got going as well. So that's a very positive thing. It's just that we're trying to catch up at this point, having learned that the lab's going through this this hiring process. We got a little bit of a lag before we got started on accommodating those needs. And so what we're seeing around the community, a lot of starts on some properties that were, many of them were post-fire. They were infill type properties. And if you look around the community, you'll see some different multifamily and single family housing going on as infill properties, which is really good from a community perspective because it's using that property that's available, but also doesn't cost the county money to put in infrastructure and other types of services in order to get these built. And that's often something that slows down some of those processes. So we do have some infill starts. We talked about this for several years, but if you're down in White Rock, you'll see some activity this year, and that is the A19 property just west of our visitor center. It's a 60-acre parcel, and there is a development going on there slated to put in approximately 163 houses and then 60 apartment units on the eastern side of it once they complete the single family side. This is a partnership. We have a development company coming in to do as you can see, put in all the infrastructure. And then they're partnered as a family business with Rayleigh Homes, who will come in and do a lot of the development there of the actual houses to be built. So we are currently taking in their plans for houses. The idea is that they're going to submit 6 to 10 different plans, and then our planning staff can review those plans and approve them ahead of time. And as they try to market these properties, individuals coming in to purchase a property will have basically a portfolio to choose from. And so you walk in, you choose your lot, you choose your house, and the permitting process should be streamlined because we've already pre-approved the design and engineering of those various houses. So the plans are already approved. It'll help affect the construction in a much quicker manner. So that's in White Rock. We've got a couple other developments we're working on. This one, same perspective, looking east, but this is up on North Mesa. And there's been some conversations with the local school system, and in fact, we've been in front of the school board a couple of times to propose a joint project, and that is on this roughly 29 acres east of the middle school, to put in some sort of housing development for primarily workforce and affordable style housing. There's an interest in providing lower entry priced housing for our teachers, our public servants, and others who are getting priced out of the market here in town. We're developing some concepts now as to how to do that. One idea would be to retain the land, the property itself, in some sort of public trust. There's something known as a community land trust. There's other models similar to that, where the land itself would be held, managed, and owned by an entity. It could be a public authority of sorts. Yet, once developed, the properties would then sell, so that the house itself would be what an individual would buy. There might be some sort of fee for the property associated, similar to a homeowners type association. However, by removing that land value from the sales price, we should be able to offer some lower priced housing for people to get in. Definitely some smaller footprints, but trying to develop a opportunity for those who are in a different price range for houses. Now, we've had that going here in the past. There's a similar development in White Rock. The issue with that is that I think the first owners of those houses got the benefits and got in at a lower rate. Unfortunately, there was no mechanism as those houses were turned over to subsequent owners. And that meant that the prices basically became market rate. We're trying to look at an opportunity here where through some sort of adopted policies, we don't have that issue going on in the future, so that, let's say an individual, talking too fast. An individual comes in and buys a house, lives in it for 5 years, they decide to move somewhere else. We want that same low price point to be available to the next person, the next family that comes in. And so there could be some sort of mechanism, be it a cap on profit off of the sale of that house, some sort of percentage that would be allowed for the homeowner to obtain, but then limiting that from a market influence so that we don't have these houses get into several $100,000 where they're competing with the others on the market. Still working on that. Again, we've got support from the school board. In fact, both the county and the school board went to our legislators. We are proposing, requesting money for infrastructure for this development through the legislative process. We anticipate it's going to be about $1.7 million for the water lines, gas lines, and everything to come to the property line to accommodate this full 29 acres of development. So we're looking for some assistance in that. Even with the billions of dollars the state has this year, don't anticipate that we'll get that full amount. We never do, but any little bit helps offset the amount that would have to come from local taxpayers to develop that property. Other housing foci, last year, I believe at this presentation, I announced that the council had approved a new affordable housing development. Affordable housing takes a number of steps. The local government has to arrange for the development, or get an agreement with the developer. Then they have to go to the Mortgage Finance Authority and request tax credits. And then after that, they have to close on the property. And we've been through that whole process with a piece of property north of DP Road. It's known as A9. If you look, it's the area where we recently ran our extension of the Canyon Rim Trail through, and will be an amenity for that development. But that's a roughly 4-acre parcel that a developer known as Bethel is going to put 70 affordable apartments for rent on this property. And that's the first of that type of development in this community for many, many years. We do have one other affordable development out on North Mesa. They recently went through a remodel, but the demand here, through this process, we have to do a demand study. The demand is for roughly 350 of these units, and we're just starting to accommodate that with the first 70 on this development. So that's moving forward. The property is closed. Bethel is looking to have it. In fact, their financing requires that they have it developed by the end of this year. So look for some activity out here. It should be coming pretty quickly. On the, let me go back. On the south side of the road, but roughly across the street, Bethel, through this process, and they'd done some 29 affordable housing developments in the state, came back to us and said, we want to do another one here. We know that demand is higher than what we're building. And so just in December of this last year, the council approved a second development with Bethel, the potential donation of land across the street, another 3 acres for approximately 62, I think it is, senior affordable housing units. And so that'll be not only income qualified, but age qualified. And that's another segment of the population we did not have a product for. And so that is something that is starting the process, similar to the way this parcel was last year. They have just gotten the donation. They now need to go through the process with the state and then come back and close to hopefully proceed with their second project. But it's not just about building new houses. We've got infill. We've got some affordable. I've reported previously, we've got other developments going on. There's a development on the former Lasso site, which is approximately 160 apartments that has not closed yet. They're doing their due diligence right now. The council has approved that project, but it's on the backs of the developer now to go through their entitlement process. Not only are we looking at building new, but we're looking at remodeling. The council wanted to make sure with all our current housing stock that it's fully utilized. And so they began a program known as Housing Renewal. And our community development department put together a policy where we have an opportunity for those of a certain income qualification to request funds to remodel their housing. And that's typically that's not so that it looks nicer, although that comes along in the case. It's those things that are critical to the operation. Heating, energy efficient, the window glazing and the insulation. In this case, I can't do water heater, boiler, something. Whatever is necessary, the individual homeowners, if they qualify, come in, make a proposal. We have a contractor that looks at the needs of the particular building. They come back. We have a limit on what the county will actually contribute to the process, but if an individual obtains that loan and then continues to live in the house, they don't have to pay that back. If they sell it, they do. And so this is an opportunity for us to promote renewal of existing properties within the community. In addition to that policy, we also started a new homeowners or a home buyers program, where again, income qualified individuals, it doesn't have to be their first house, but can come in and they can obtain, I believe it's up to $15,000 for down payment purposes. So it helps get people over that hump of having the down payment and get into their first house. Again, the same issues, depending on how long they stay in the property, there's a prorated reduction of that loan so that if someone does stay in that house, they don't have to pay it back. But we're trying to promote that home buyer opportunity for those who would not otherwise be able to afford in our community, especially given the economics locally of limited supply and very high demand. So housing has been a big focus. The reason we have been focusing on housing is partly the demand, but for years the council's had a goal of trying to increase our residential population from what has been 18,000 for about 25 years to 20,000. The idea being that at 20,000, a lot of businesses start looking at us. There's basically a cutoff. They're not going to look, the national chains don't look at communities of a certain size. And they each have a different target. However, 20,000 is kind of that first cutoff for many of them. And so we've been trying to build our population to 20,000. Can't do that if we don't have any place for them to live. The idea is with that increase in population, we get on the radar of these businesses. We have an opportunity for more retail opportunities in the community. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're seeing a lot more interest in retailers, others coming into the community to do some development. We've had some increase in our retailers in the community, this being one of them, the Petrie Garden Center over the last year, which is a great reuse of existing space. Great to have a new business in town. We've had several other starts in the community. And in the report, you'll see that over the last year, we have increased our retail tax receipts by 9%. And that's a significant number. That's just the last year. Over the last 5 years, we've increased our retail activity, as measured by gross receipts tax revenue, by 40% in the last 5 years. Now, a big part of that was Smiths, no doubt about it. But if you look at the last year at 9%, that's on top of that additional activity. And that was some of what was predicted when the county took on the Smiths project, was that you bring in a big retailer, we believe that that would bring other activity to the community, and it's seeming to prove true just by the numbers that we're receiving now. And so over the last year, for this community to have increased almost 10% as retail sector is significant. I think many other communities would appreciate that same opportunity. We've also have, not just on retail, a number of different spinoffs that have occurred and are continuing to thrive in the community. The county's worked with some of them to assist in obtaining grant funds. We've worked with Viome. We've got Ubiquity has been a great prosperous startup. We've got the consortium, all of them down on the east end of town that have been associated with the lab previously, looking at some technical issues but are thriving. And this has been an effort to retain these businesses, because traditionally you get a spinoff. We've had this happen to us too. They come here for a month or a year, and then they find greener pastures elsewhere. They get another offer. They're looking for other opportunities, and we're trying to fix those things that many of the technological entities have told us are problems in the community. Connectivity has been an issue. Our land prices, the county went through created a development for sale of commercial property as well. And just this activity that we have now has been a great boon for every other business in town too, because we're getting to this kind of communal growth that is expanding at present. Excuse me. In addition to economic ideas, and if you look through the annual report, you'll see we kind of focus on economic vitality, we focus on quality of life, and then quality governance. And so I don't make that distinction in my slideshow. You'll see it in the report where we try to focus some of the information based on those areas. But in addition to our economic side, we've been looking at developing the community and providing new amenities. For years, we've felt that the our natural environment could attract more people up here and hopefully influence the tourism sector as well. In fact, last year we went through a process of developing a tourism plan, and that's guiding some of our efforts. I've got a picture of a sign here for two reasons. One is that we've installed some signage on our trails as we've tried to attract people up to the community. Traditionally, you go out, there's trails out there. Well, you get somebody who isn't living around here, and it's difficult to navigate. We've gone through a process of putting in some signage at some very visible points so that we can have better activity. People can come up here and actually utilize our trails. I think it's important to see that they're multi-use. That's been an issue we've discussed in the last year, but trying to show through that particular sign how you should act when you encounter other users of the trail. We've had quite a bit of conversation about that with respect to bicycling or mountain biking over the past year. But this sign also, we've gone through a wayfinding plan, and that's not necessarily for our trail system, but for our community, as we anticipate bringing tourists into the community. They come here. How do you get to the ski hill if you're driving up Main Hill Road? We all know how to do it, but it's kind of daunting if you think about it for somebody who's never been here before. And so trying to create a messaging system that our tourists know what to look for. Similar colored signs, inappropriate locations, directing them to parking so that they can get out of their car and visit our businesses and the like. We went through the process with a consultant, developed a plan. The thing holding that up in its implementation right now is our budgets. We had monies that we asked for in order to go. It costs money to put signs up, and when you're looking at signing an entire community, it actually costs quite a bit of money. But we're limited because of our revenue situation right now, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's really the next step, is finding the funds in order to take this plan and implement it throughout the community. Anybody see this project? Amazing what Chainlink will do. No, it's vinyl coated chain link, but I had always seen the fence as it was, and I'm sure many of us drove by it for years. But once you see the change from putting a brand new fence and getting rid of the years of accumulated, there was barbed wire, and then there was other fencing, cattle fencing on top of that. If you'd look closely, it was a mishmash of various fences. But that, at the entrance to our community, has been a great way to upgrade for people driving into town. And it also provides extra protection for users of the airport, because this keeps critters out as well as people. It's not just about a visual barrier, but instead there's security issues related to airports that we had to accommodate in order to obtain future FAA funds. So I was just talking about this little area. This slide shows a lot of different things, and I felt it was important to talk about today. One issue that's coming up soon and will affect everybody in the community, you'll smile when it's done, is the green area. For years, this predates me coming here. I've been here for 7 years, and when I got here, we were talking about the proposed roundabout right there. This has been a topic for so many years. It's finally coming to town, and that's some improvements to our entranceway. In fact, the current project is a state project slated to go from the Trinity and Connect out to Airport and Tewa Road. That was the project boundaries. Now, due to funding, they've shrunk that a little bit as to what they're going to actually be able to touch. But we've got infrastructure is in the form of water, sewer, and gas lines being replaced in that corridor. The county came in when the Smiths development came in. We put infrastructure under the Trinity so that it was already in place, so that we don't have to rip it back up later, because certainly if we get new payment down, we want to leave it there. And our utilities department has also contributed to this project to the tune of $1.25 million, so that all the lines that are in the right-of-way can be moved to accommodate the changes to the road path. But basically, after the utilities, they're going to come in and pave, I believe it's from approximately right here, all the way to Connect, I believe, correct? Follow? With a roundabout at the, let me get the right place, at the Hilltop House as part of the design. And in fact, the state bid it. They bid it 3 times because the first 2 times came in way too high. And they finally got a bid they could accept. They accepted it in October of this past year, yet all of a sudden winter came on and they suspended the contract to restart March 4th, I believe it is. So come March, there'll be significant activity out there. Obviously, they're going to first do some staking, preparation type of stuff, but during this next summer season, we're going to have construction out there. Everybody's going to go, oh my goodness, what's going to happen at 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m.? Through the process, we've already been in contact with the state, had several meetings. They have promised that during the morning and afternoon hours, commute times, there will be 2 lanes open. There will always be 1 lane open, but there will be 1 lane in each direction during those times so that we don't have the backup, which is great. And they've been working with it because they understood their experience in the project just last year down on the main hill and beyond. All the backups there. We had a little bit of benefit in saying, remember what happened there? We want to try to make sure we don't have similar things happen at this time. I want to say now it's a state project. It'll be a state project in March and in June. However, we try to work real closely with the state because it affects us. We try to be the conduit between our community and the state on these projects. So far, there's been a lot of conversation. One of the things, obviously, if we disrupt traffic in this area, it's going to affect others. It's going to affect our downtown access. It's going to affect our residential access. But we also have a significant amount of businesses out on DP Road, which is right in the middle of the project. And this particular activity out here is commercial. We also have some DOE actions where I think there's 15, 17 trucks we've learned that'll be coming in and out of that site during the project. The businesses obviously need people to be able to get to them for their customers to arrive and them to receive deliveries and everything. We will have, here's A9, which is where we have our affordable housing project going in. Remember, it has to be built by the end of this year. There's going to be a lot of things going on during this next year. And so we've had conversations with the business owners. We've had conversations with DOE in the lab. We've had conversations with our developers, trying to make sure everything's coordinated before we get to that point. And we will continue to do public outreach. Our cone zone will be very active, I'm sure, through this process as we try to alleviate. There will be still some delays. I won't kid anybody, but alleviate those various impacts and also get that project complete at the same time. So we're hopeful. We don't know what the ultimate timeline yet. As we get into any construction project, there are often things that come up. But there will be staging their materials there, as you can see. And in fact, this tract is where the senior affordable housing project is looking to go to. So DP Road has attracted all sorts of interest. This last year, we've also, Tract 16A was transferred to the county as part of our continuing land transfer process with the laboratory. They cleaned it up, transferred it to the county. We are in the process of subdividing, working with various businesses that want to populate out there. We're looking at, in fact, DP Road is something we're going to be considering as we go forward in terms of its uses, its planning for uses in the future. This area out here, Fraser, I don't want to misspeak here, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, but was a big manufacturing part in the early lab days. There was a plutonium something facility. I know I'm not in that. There's also need for cleanup out here, significant cleanup. And it's been going on for several years. I know that this is a focus right now. If cleaned up, there's some beautiful properties out here for viewscapes, amazing. We are still looking at what the ultimate use will be, which will be partly dictated by the amount of cleanup we can get to, because you got to clean it up more to allow for residential than you would necessarily for commercial type of uses or industrial. But as we work through that process, we're looking at how do we go from what has been a commercial center to what are we going to use these parcels for, to ultimately what is the disposition of this parcel, and we try to plan for that so that we have a cohesive neighborhood, basically, when we're done with the entire project. And a lot of those decisions are still being made. We're still having that conversation about what is the best and highest use for certain areas out here. A lot of information. I don't know if you have any questions about that. It's a neat presentation just for people to see what's going to be going on in that general area over the next 12 months. Yes, Ren?
Terry, I hope to do the March business breakfast,
Uh-huh.
possibly about this topic and how it's going to affect businesses. Philo, maybe we could talk about that and nail down a date
Sure.
if that works for you. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, we want everybody to know what's going on because
Absolutely. Thank you.
we're going to have to adjust all of our schedules and expectations through that project.
Sure.
Thank you. We appreciate that and any other opportunities to kind of interact on this subject.
Great.
Our transit system continues to be a favored system. In fact, in the last year, we've expanded a lot of the operations to accommodate some of our special events. You've heard about the Buzz Bus at certain events. We've expanded that to others so that we have more opportunities for people to take a safe way home after celebrating. And that's been received well when we do advertise for a weekend event, be it New Year's. Halloween was a new one that we did this year. Those types of things, there's an opportunity for more people to be out drinking and potentially driving, and this, we're just trying to accommodate those needs. We've had worked with our DWI council to plan for those, and we've had 45 to 60 people utilize the bus on some of these weekend events, and I think that's a great thing. In addition to what we were already doing with the Ski Hill and others, where on special events we're running those buses to accommodate those needs. And it was interesting. The development, the need for this system, people rely on it through these last snowstorms. You know, there's been days when we couldn't run the buses when we closed down. Our bus drivers are out there shoveling snow out of the shelters here so that people can actually use this. It's just an additional need to make it safe for all the users. We get a lot of snow. People don't want to drive. They want to get on the bus. But in addition to that, we have to clean out the facilities to enable that. And just a little added wrinkle in the whole system. This is neat. The Environmental Sustainability Board and our EcoStation worked together to implement a yard waste recycling program over the last year. In fact, it went into effect July 1st. At present, just slightly over half of all of our accounts actually have a TAN dispenser at their home. Everybody had to sign up individually. Many people did. It was a good response for that. And through this, we've been able to divert as much as 14% of our waste stream. That's real money, because on the Hill, we don't have a landfill. We truck all of our waste presently to Sandoval County, I believe. Philo's nodding, so I got that right. Imagine the cost of several trucks a day, and these aren't pickup trucks. They're the big waste truck. It's full. To haul down there, it's a significant expense. And so anything we don't have to haul is a benefit. Anything we divert from the waste stream is a benefit for the environment. We've had an active recycling program, which everybody typically associates with cans, cups, and newspapers. But in this case, that yard waste, it's organic material. It just takes up quite a bit of space. But by not having to put that in the waste stream, it's a benefit not only to our bottom line, but also to our local environment. We also have more fodder for our annual compost giveaway, our continuous compost giveaway, which this material is shredded, mixed with, what was it? The biosolids. Thank you. That was a term. There's other terms, but I'll use that one. To create compost, okay, which is reused. I mean, many of our residents come out and we actually use it for our parks, our medians, and golf course to provide some nutrients to those various operations as well. And in fact, our EcoStation was recognized this year. We received was it Recycler of the Year, or was it a Recycling Award for the implementation of this new program, because it's so unique, and the state appreciated what we had done here. Also, and this involves being a Chamber of Commerce event, so I think this is important, through the county's branding effort. I've been trying to implement our new brand, make sure that everybody knows what it is. We put it in the middle of Central and 7th and 15th there, right? But important to any brand is adoption of it by the community. And the consultants we're working with had a process where they like to reach out to local businesses, involve them in what is known as in our case, is a discovery action team. and that's aligned with our where discoveries are made. But these teams, we've had outreach to the community. We've had businesses. I believe it's about every other month or every quarter that we have a Discovery Actions team meeting where local businesses come to participate. We look at ways we can utilize our brand. We can incorporate it into the various businesses' use. I do know that Metzger's used it for their 70th anniversary. There's great advertising right there. Thank you. Playing that. CB Fox is selling hats with the logo on there. We're trying to create a recognizable brand that will attract these tourists and visitors here, as well as build pride in the community towards our brand, so that when people come here to visit, we have kind of the common theme in talking to them. And we do that through our interaction with our businesses. Their support helps our efforts and vice versa. And then everyone we work with, we haven't been charging or worrying about copyrights or anything else in order to get this brand out and used by the whole community. So this has been an additional effort on top of the original brand development to try to get it rolled out, and it's been very beneficial. We've had great attendance at these events. I'm sure many of you have been to them, and I appreciate the continued support, because as a community we can build that economic attraction for more people to participate locally. This is a neat new way. Obviously, Wahey Pine Cemetery, we had an individual everybody probably knows, his former counselor, I believe he's a state representative as well, Vernon Kerr, came to the council, said, there's churches all around the community that have columbariums. Why doesn't the county? It's a neat new way that's become more accepted. As people are cremated, it's an opportunity for them to place their remains or their loved ones' remains in this is known as a columbarium. It's basically each one of these blocks have a face that can be removed. As you would buy a plot, you'd instead buy I think it's a vault, or it's described as a vault. That vault can hold as many as inter as many as two cremains. And so this would be the cremains for as many as 160 people, as compared to the property needs if we were all to do plots. And with people choosing to be cremated more commonly, we were actually putting these cremains into a normal plot, which seemed like quite a waste of available land. So for those who choose this type of burial, it is something that's become more mainstream, and we wanted to offer that as an additional opportunity for our populace. Mr. Kerr was the first one in line to buy his vault, which has been really neat. In fact, I think it's not in the annual report, but I do a monthly report, and it was a picture of that in our monthly report. It's just nice to see that he was able to participate in something that he initiated. We also moved I think that's a spirit dance is the name of the artwork. It was moved from our Ashley Pond area out there to provide a little additional ornamentation for the cemetery itself. Now, this picture's kind of weird, and I don't like to just put pictures of people up here, but it has a purpose. And because it was different, we're kind of leaning back, but that's not really how the original looked. It's just when I had to fit it to page. The point here is, these are our police department. It's Chief Scambalone, or Dino as he's known, but sometimes it's easier to say Dino. As well as other members of our fire department and two members of the accreditation committee. This is our police department went through, I said fire, didn't I? Our police department went through an accreditation process led by Chief Scambalone during this past year. In fact, in March, they were awarded accreditation, and it's a long process to get there. It takes up more than a year to get all your ducks in a row to sit for a review by the accrediting agency. We were able to go to Frisco, Texas, receive this award. The point here is that our fire department had previously gone through accreditation. In fact, they've been accredited 4 times by an international agency. They are one of, I think it's in the 200 range of fire departments that are accredited in this nation by the International Accrediting Agency. Our police department is one of 3 in the state now that is accredited by CALEA. and that is the organization providing accreditation. There is a state accreditation. The CALIA accreditation is a little bit more involved. They went for the CALIA accreditation, which means that now we are the only community in the state that is internationally accredited for both its police and fire departments. Why do we do accreditation? It's so that we compare ourselves, it's to benchmark our operations against some standards nationwide. And so they go through the process, they get their policies reviewed, they make sure that application actually follows those policies, so we do a review of particular events. And then if they go through the whole process, they are awarded the accreditation. Our police department was 100% compliant with that process. There were others that were in the 90s. You know, we kind of said, what is passing? But the neat thing is, and during the presentation, they were awarded, they were 100% compliant, which was a neat new thing. I will mention that a third county department has gone through accreditation and been now awarded accreditation. That is our community development department. And they are the ones who issue building permits, who do code enforcement, all the things that have gotten such positive reviews in the last year. They pursued accreditation in order to be able to say, hey, we're not alone in what we're doing. I mean, we as a county, we adopted the International Building Code. Think about that name. That tells you that there are other communities throughout the world that adopt the same policies. And however, locally, we believe that we should have different codes, or that's some of the feedback we get at least. The purpose of going through accreditation for our community development department was to make sure that they are not, we get a lot of complaints about our permitting process, but that accreditation shows that we're doing it like everyone else out there does it. They took our policies, same as the police department, our procedures, compared them against others, and found us to be of a standard that they're promoting. And so we have not received the award yet. We've been informed of that accreditation as well. From a quality government point of view, the purpose of going through these exercises is to make sure that we're providing a high level of service and a reviewed level of service. Others, you know, the experts from outside tell us that we're doing a good job, so that we can continue to provide good services to the community. We also work very closely with the public schools. Our elected officials meet with school board members on a monthly basis to discuss issues of common interest. In particular, over the last year, I believe it was this summer that it was actually opened, if that's right, Kurt, the county assisted the schools in the redevelopment of the auditorium there, the Dwayne Smith, and contributed $1.2 million to the project. Schools had gone and gotten legislative monies, put their own monies into it. Ultimately, I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go through the facility since it's been remodeled. I've heard nothing but positive things about it, and it's just one other example of how we try to collaborate locally. The reason the county got involved in this is basically our event center. Although owned by the schools, everybody in the community uses it. And we wanted to be supportive of that need, just an additional amenity and now an improved amenity for our public. One other thing, and maybe not the most exciting picture, but during the last year, or actually over the last 2.5 years, the county's been going through a process of updating our financial software, our enterprise resource system. And we had been operating on a software system that was over 20 years old. That software does our billing for utilities. It did our financial tracking, but we also had other budgeting programs. We had other HR programs we had to link to this process. We said, okay, 20 years, lots of things have changed in the information technology world over that past 20 years. Maybe there's a better product out there now. So we implemented a county-wide financial system that incorporates all of our different systems into one single software platform. Enterprise Resource Program is what it's known as, if anybody else has ever worked with those. Excuse me. And launched it July 1st. There was some hiccups, as with any countywide program. You know, it's touching so many people. I know there were some late utility bills that went out, but overall, we've now got operating under a new system. Everything's integrated, which is going to help us be more efficient in our provision of services going forward. more accountable. There's going to be ultimately an ability for the public to review all our financials, checks written and such on a portal online that is also facilitated by our adoption of a new financial system. Our HR is incorporated into it so that payroll from intake is put into our budget needs, and all of our payment systems all work off that same platform now. Quite a big accomplishment, I must say, and the number of people that were involved with it, there was probably some 25 county staff that were involved in the implementation over about a 2.5-year period. And we're still working out some of the final implementation today as we get towards those reporting platforms that we can show our financials to the public. Next to last slide. And I want to offer you all an opportunity to ask some questions, but this is dated. If you look, it actually predates you, Frazier, because it's talking about the environmental management contract. But the point here is we're going through this a big issue for the county for the past year and going into this next year is the gross receipts tax situation. As the lab is changing operations, going to Triad, as the new manager for the lab, the question has come up as to whether or not they're a taxable entity. We identified this as a concern back when we were talking about this particular contract, because we anticipated that there could be a question that comes up anytime the lab turns over. We were previously a non-taxable situation, went to taxable, it could go back. Well, for the county, for your community amenities and such, we're dependent on that revenue to provide those services. In fact, if the lab goes to a non-taxable situation, we estimate we'll lose approximately $20 million annually in revenue. Our general fund budget is $50 million, give or take. So approximately 40% of our operating budget would disappear. And you can just think about what the results of that would be, the impacts. We'd have to reduce services, we'd have to reduce personnel. We haven't gone through the process of identifying exactly what, because that is a political process to try to figure out what specific areas we touch on. But that's been our concern. We conveyed it to NNSA. We've traveled to DC a number of different times. We've talked with local site office personnel, and we've also gone to our legislature. Last year in February, we were successful in getting a bill passed through the legislature, both houses, over 75% support, so it was bipartisan as well, to require any national laboratory within the state of New Mexico to pay gross receipts taxes for their operations. That bill was unfortunately vetoed by the governor. So we did not have that assurance that we would have a continued revenue source. Today, Triad is paying taxes for its operations. However, there's a potential that they could go to the IRS and apply for 501c3 designation. If they do so, it could take 6 months or a year for them to get their answer because it's a complicated consideration. If awarded that status, our concern, one, is that we will not have that $20 million a year going forward, so we're going to have to consider our operations. But in addition to that, if awarded, it's retroactive back to the date on which they apply. So if Triad applies for 501c3 tomorrow and we don't hear about it for 12 months, I'll be standing in front of you next year going, oh my God, I got to find $20 million I've already spent to pay them back. Because they wouldn't have to pay taxes, they'd be due a refund for anything they've paid up to that date. That's an unknown that we have a difficulty accommodating, because that means that we potentially would preemptively cut our budget to prevent the expenditure of that money if we learn that they are pursuing 501c3. Triad's been great to work with, don't get me wrong. They have told us that they will let us know if they do make that application, which allows us some of the planning, the time to do the planning. It's just one of those unknowns as we look towards last year. We were talking about recreation projects. The council chose not to pursue those until we get an answer. Similarly, we adopted a flat budget. Our employees did not get a raise this last year until we know what the outcome is going to be. And that cascades down into all sorts of other operational decisions at present, as we're playing a wait and see game right now. So it's our interest to maintain the taxable relationship, in talking to others around the state, there's always questions about, aren't you already getting enough money type of things? Well, if you think about providing services to a community, every other community in the state bases that on our gross receipts taxes. And the amenities are dictated by the amount of taxes that are generated. We have a industry that employs 11,000 people. That demands significant services from the county. And if any other industry were to pay half of their tax bill, they would get half the services. I think that's the consideration we have going forward, is if our primary industry, and despite 9% last year and 40% increase in retail, 80% of our revenue comes from the lab. And so we're just trying to protect the ability for us to continue to provide a high level of service to our community, and we believe directly to the lab so that they can attract more people. As they're trying to hire 1,000 people a year, those 1,000 people have a lot of options. The employees they attract have options in where they want to go, and do they want to come to a community that has transit and a high level of recreational services and good governmental amenities, or a different place. If we are less attractive because we cannot invest in housing, if we do not have that revenue, our efforts would stop if we don't have that money. And so we feel, and we've tried to communicate, that we are here to support the lab, but we need that revenue in order to be able to do that. So that's still something we're working on. The legislature, in fact, yesterday, I know several folks here in this room were down at the legislature. The same bill has been reintroduced for this year with a new governor. We have hopes that it'll get through. They were in the Senate Corporations Committee yesterday, got a due pass out of that committee, so we'll be following that bill as it progresses. Neat picture too, huh? With that, I want to take the time for any questions, and I know I'll be here till 9:30 or so. If others have to leave, you're welcome to do so. I won't take it personally, but has anybody got any questions? All right, y'all have a good day. Yes, Libby.
Are there going to be any additional roadways that will come straight off of the highway to access some of the DP road infrastructure development? What's going on there, or are we going to be funneling down from that one entry point?
Right. For the foreseeable future, it'll still be that one entry point. Now, it will be redesigned so that it's more of a 90-degree angle, which is typical of road construction standards. At the point where DP splits off of Trinity, but the options are quite expensive for alternate routes. A bridge over another canyon is really the only way to consider an alternate route. Yes, sir.
So, how come the property behind the old administration building, or where the administration building used to be, we all expected that to be, out of the ground by now, and the county gave a lot of that land to them or whatever. Where's the fire to their feet to get that?
Oh, you're talking about the LASO, the lab administration building down behind the hospital. Yeah. The county has entered into a development agreement with the potential purchasers. It included a extended, I'm trying to remember, it was like 280-day or so due diligence period. The request for that was due to the financing structure that organization was going through. And they're actually, although it's market rate housing, they're looking for HUD financing, which I understand has a additional bureaucratic review in order to get through it. They were slated to, that period ends, I believe, roughly March or April of this year. We were just informed that their application is not progressing because of the federal shutdown. So we don't know exactly what, that was our original agreed upon date. However, it's possible that we may be looking at some sort of slight extension just to accommodate them getting through their financing with the federal government.
Okay, so in a follow-up.
So, Brand, you must feel like you're the pastor on Christmas church day where everybody showed up, right?
Absolutely.
But, that kind of, there's, I think sometimes the county forces, gives dates to individuals, to businesses, to whatever, to get this done by this date or you're out, or whatever. And then it's a double standard when you're given such land to that individual, which costs us all extra money. And I don't know if that is what I would call fair. I think there's always going to be some exterminating or that's not the word.
Extenuating.
Sorry, yes. That would, as we say, but that could also be said to a lot of other things that have happened to either homeowners or businesses or whatever, and that's my opinion. And I just wondered why, like I say, sometimes that I don't think there's enough pipeline of information being expressed between the county and the smaller entities in this town compared to the big ones.
Okay, that's part of the reason I'm here this morning. I appreciate the comment,
For
John.
instance, we're speaking on DP Road, we have a building on DP Road and no one's ever contacted us about the impact on that roundabout. So
Okay.
something's missing.
I will certainly, there's a couple of people in the back that'll be contacting you. I do know we've had a specific meeting there and had a lot of conversations with y'all about some other issues, but
Right.
we're trying to do our best.
I realize that.
And there's always going to be that. That's part of the reason to be here and do other stuff. I don't think I'm ever going to appear in front of a group and there's not going to be somebody that doesn't want more. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I know these guys will get in touch with you about that.
As will I, John, about trying to get something set up for a chamber breakfast.
And that may be another opportunity for that. George, I see one other, and then I'll call on you. Yes, sir. Kurt?
Harry, the schools are very appreciative of the county and the partnership on Dwayne Smith and helping us with affordable housing. We're having a terrible time trying to hire teachers. They get a choice between a job offer at Rio Rancho and Los Alamos, and we've lost some really good teachers to Rio Rancho.
Sure.
And so we really appreciate that. Question about the bill on gross receipts tax that's in the legislature. Does it have an emergency clause? Would it become effective as soon as the governor signs it, or when's the effective date?
The present as written doesn't have that emergency clause, and so like any other bill, it'd be a July 1st type of situation. There's potential for amendments along the way. I don't anticipate that's going to be one of the pushes. As I said, the triads paying gross receipts taxes now, they would have to submit an application that would take much longer than that July 1st date. So there hasn't been a real conversation about the need for an emergency clause.
Okay.
Georgia?
I was just wondering about Diamond Drive out by the golf course, and I realize, bad weather and all the wear and tear on it, but, and I know budgetary stuff, but it's getting pretty seriously rutted and potholed
Yes.
out there, and I don't know if that was slated, because that's one of the early Diamond Drive remakes, and I figured that you're gonna probably go back and now do it in the same order.
I don't think it's just in front of the golf course.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Diamond Drive has seen a lot of damage over this last winter. We've got some planning to do as to how to address the entirety of Diamond Drive. I personally wasn't here when Diamond Drive was actually constructed, the reconstruction, or I'll exempt Philo from that as well. I've heard stories about how that whole process went, whether or not that it actually affected the longevity of the roadway or not is up for opinion, basically. But yes, we have a lot of potholes out there, and we're going to have to do a lot of repairs once the season allows us to. The big problem that we have, and it's just a matter of what will work and what won't, is that the hot mix, the asphalt, is not made during this time of year because people don't usually do construction. And that's the best thing to fill a lot of those areas, especially the larger ones. The only other thing we can do is go to Lowe's like everybody else and pick up a package of that pre-mixed stuff. Oh.
Or Metzger's.
I've never seen it in Metzger's, I didn't think about that. I appreciate the salt I bought 2 days ago. My apologies, but wherever we go, that stuff doesn't stay very long. And that's our big problem with any construction this time of year. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to suffer through some potholes. We can do some temporary repairs of the worst ones. In fact, you might have seen, we got the state out to do some on 502 the other day. There was a crews out there, because they were even worse out in the airport. But we've got a big project ahead of us this coming year.
Well, also, I'd like to commend the roads department on their heroics during these storms, that, all getting the roads open and, they're, what they found is dry and, still.
I tell you, that storm was something I had never seen before.
Yeah.
Certainly in, a few mountaintops around the country, but not in any community I'd ever lived in. What I've been told is it was 30 years since we had that much snow here. And we felt it in trying to, you saw our crews go back through to clean up, widen the street, because we had predicted other storms. And we were getting concerned about where we're going to push the subsequent snow. But thank you for that. They worked hard and a lot of overtime hours. Yes, Lynn.
All that new housing that's being planned and already going in is absolutely wonderful. I mean, I think as I look back, the 18,000 figure for the county has been for decades, really like decades. So that is such a fantastic ratcheting up. It's going to cut loose a lot of development, like you said, for companies that want to look at being here at 20,000 population. But it strikes me, so to make those new housing areas really work for people, you've got to have transit going into them, in and out of them really regularly, especially for the lower income housing that's expected and the senior housing. So has our transit department started looking at that yet and making a plan? Or is that something that's just going to need to wait, especially with this gross receipts tax issue?
A little bit of both, I guess is the best answer. In fact, yes, we've looked at it, but obviously not implemented anything until that becomes more of an apparent need.
Sure.
Part of the location decision, specifically for those affordable units, they get more points. Just in order to get the tax credits, they compete, and that's the Mortgage Finance Authority's process. So we were building on a brownfield site. It was on a transit route. It had a trail walking by it. It was blocked from the grocery store. Those things all elevated the application in MFA's eyes. In fact, we were the #1 application and got first dibs on that. So yes, that was part of the actual process in determining where where the land was that we would donate was something that had all those amenities, particularly for those in the that would be applying for the affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to make a point following Linda and a couple other comments about the 20,000 population threshold. A lot of times it's mentioned that that's going to open the door for more regional national players to come in, but then it gets forgotten that 2,000 on roughly 20,000 is a 10% increase, is 10% more people in our doors as well, and so that's another important reason for this housing area. That doesn't just bring outsiders into the business, it also brings more people into our business.
Absolutely. I think we're seeing that collective effect of our businesses here. In fact, if you look at the annual report online, there's some headers in there and it talks about one of our accolades for the last year. I'm not sure the exact number. I think it was 6th fastest growing micropolitan area. Something like that. We looked hard for some accolades. But it's going to your point in that it's a smaller community. We've already seen some increases in population significant enough to put us in a good comparison to others of our similar size. And so we're already seeing those population increases. It's over the 18,000 threshold. Last I saw was about 18,400 or so. But that increase itself has already caused some ripples. It's statistically significant. All right. If nothing else, I appreciate your time. I really appreciate having this folks come out here. It'd be hard for me to just talk to one or two, so thank you very much for the opportunity.